Hey everyone, welcome to Danny Chats. This is episode number 16, and today I'm joined by Amy. Hi Amy, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. How are you?
Very good, thank you. And where are you calling from?
Sunny San Diego. We're having like record highs in January.
Oh really? Yeah, it's freezing here. Freezing, wet, and just miserable, typical English weather.
I feel like everybody else in the world is saying that, but we're like upper 70s, great waves,
Yeah, I actually
sunshine.
saw a picture on your Instagram the other day on your Insta stories, and I was so jealous. Like, that looks beautiful.
Yeah, I can't complain much.
Yeah, nice, nice. Well, thank you for talking to us, or to me. So you had a liver transplant when you was younger, right?
Yeah, I'm going on about 10 years. So, yeah, it'll be 10 years this year. So I was 26, which I think is still pretty young.
Yeah,
So,
definitely, definitely.
still kind of a kid, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, my liver transplant was kind of unique in the sense that I didn't have a genetic or an autoimmune component. I actually had an allergic reaction to a medication. I was being treated for a latent disease. I won't go into all the details because then people worry if they have it, if they can take the medicine. It kind of freaks people out.
Yeah.
But I was being treated. Unfortunately, I wasn't being monitored correctly on this medication, which led to acute liver failure. With acute liver failure, you become so sick so fast. You're in the ICU. Um, for me, I kind of masked some of the symptoms being a young, very healthy 26-year-old. So when they figured out what was wrong with me, I was extremely sick. I was given 48 to 96 hours to live
Wow.
without a liver transplant. I was in the ICU, and I mean, this is someone who, I was a few weeks before that running, doing CrossFit, going to school, working. I was actually in nursing school at the time, or taking my prereqs for nursing school, some science classes and things. And I was listed on a Friday in June, and I received my transplant. They took me down to the OR late that night, late Sunday night for my transplant. It was actually on my grandma's birthday, which was
Oh,
kind of neat.
nice. Yeah.
So we always joke that no one will ever forget my grandma's birthday because I won't let them. So, so yeah, I was encephalopathic. I was very confused. I didn't know what was going on. To kind of make light of a very serious story, I they kept asking me who the president of the United States was, and I swore that it was Osama bin Laden. He had recently been captured, and I told the surgeons that if they didn't know who the president was, they shouldn't be smart enough to operate on me. Um, so I was I was mostly pleasantly confused, but I was definitely right all the time.
Yeah.
So very, very sick. My family was terrified, of course. And luckily, I had a great recovery from my transplant. I was out of the hospital in 5 days. Um,
Wow.
yeah, just because I was so healthy prior to. I had
Yeah.
no existing medical conditions, no hypertension, no high cholesterol, nothing. So I got out of there pretty fast. I'm very lucky
Co-
that. Oh, go on.
So I was gonna say, considering 5 days before you were, almost gone,
Yeah,
it's
yeah. I mean,
incredible, isn't it,
that's
what a new liver can do?
it's crazy. I mean, your liver has 500 functions,
Yeah.
and clearly, I don't know how many of mine were lost, but I don't think I was working at any capacity, compatible with life, even right before my transplant.
Yeah.
They said that 80% of my liver had failed according to the biopsy,
Wow.
which, I mean, it's crazy that every other organ was so healthy that it was probably compensating.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, not to say that I got out of the hospital 5 days later and was doing backflips or
Of
anything. It
course,
was still
but
rough.
still, just 5 days in that short amount of time, you're up and walking, and it's
Yeah,
amazing.
I was walking. I was, I always had to be told, not to overdo it, not to push myself. That was really hard. As someone who, I was an athlete. I'm always really competitive. So it was hard for me not to want to outdo myself every last, physical therapy or anything. I had to do better. And sometimes, I had to just accept maybe one day, like nothing was going my way. They were like, it's fine. It's one day. You can rest. I'm like, but can I? Which is kind of my overall personality. So yeah, luckily, I had amazing surgeon, doctors. My nurses were, I was really spoiled, I think. I actually worked on the unit after nursing school and during nursing school. And
so you'd worked on the unit prior to being in there?
No, I hadn't.
Okay.
I was just getting my prerequisites, just taking some science classes. I was actually just waiting tables, just kind of doing whatever was most flexible to get to through nursing school.
Yeah.
So yeah, the nurses were great, but I think I got a little bit spoiled. I think just given my circumstance and it being so scary and me being so sick, I feel like I got a little bit spoiled and I was, cared for. Just, it was amazing.
But I think we all like to think that in a way, because I always think that, but I just think nurses and stuff, they just they don't get enough credit for the job they do, because it's not just the technical side of it, it is the compassion and everything else that is involved. And I've met some people that make the stay on the ward, so much more bearable.
Exactly. And I think, they did, it was easier to connect with me because they were all so close to my age.
Yeah.
So I felt like that, maybe, but I saw it afterwards, let me play your favorite song while I give you a bath. Oh, you like this. Oh, you like to watch this show. The nurses know so many things about you, especially, ICU, you're with them.
Yeah.
Pretty much your whole shift, going between two different patients' rooms or one patient's room. So you get a relationship with them, you get a relationship with their family, and I don't think I could do my job unless I had that relationship.
Yeah, definitely.
It makes it harder sometimes, but you need that. It makes your day go by better. It makes your patient's outcomes better.
Oh, 100% it does, because like I say, it's not just the physical aspect, the mental aspect of it all is a massive part of recovery. And hospital is hard, it's hard. So, if the people around you are nice, and it makes a hell of a difference.
Oh yeah, and I've been hospitalized once post transplant, and I've had a couple procedures, and being a healthcare professional and being a patient is really hard. And I feel like the nurses and everyone that knew my entire situation and what I do for a living really honed in on that. It's, as nurses, it's hard to like release a little bit of control in that setting. So I'm lucky that I feel like that's been welcomed. Nurses always joke, would you rather take care of a physician, a nurse, a family member of one? And we're like, oh, nurses, hands down the worst patients.
Really?
Oh, we're bad. Yeah.
They tell you how you're doing the
every
job.
little thing. So
Yeah, tell you how you're doing it wrong.
Yeah. Or just wrong, right? What you could do different. We're trying to pick up on things.
Yeah.
We're bad.
Yeah, that's funny. So you had your operation, and then I suppose you were put on anti-rejection tablets.
Yes.
Yeah, and how are you with all the medication? Are you on just anti-rejection tablets? Are you on steroids or?
So right now I'm on kind of a triple therapy. I have my Prograf, of course.
Yeah.
I am on Cellcept. It's decreasing. I've kind of gone on and off of that just based on kind of random flare-ups and things. And I'm on a little bit of a steroid. Luckily, it's not prednisone.
Yeah.
And that's decreasing too. So I think just being young and having a healthy immune system kind of ramps everything up. And I'm so used to the medication.
Yeah.
I didn't really take any medication prior to transplant, but I've just gotten used to it. It was kind of, you wake up and you're told everything, and I'm kind of literal and black and white in some senses. So it was take the medication, lose your liver. you know, like you have two options, you know, and that's how I kind of made it easy for me to take the medication. I never wanted to be that sick.
Yeah, if you don't take your medication, then it stops working.
Yeah, and it's scary, and I've seen it, and the effects are terrible.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, just as I was leaving the hospital, so they discharged me, they'd kicked me out of the rooms, they wanted someone else in there. I was waiting in the outpatients like lobby bit. My sister was coming to pick me up, and there was a man there who was watching TV who was on the ward, and to sort of cut it all short, he had had a liver transplant years ago. He'd moved to Spain. He wasn't taking care of himself. He was eating all the things he shouldn't. I don't think he was taking his medication, and he ended up with ended up in a coma at the hospital. And he told me that his nails had grown really, really long because the nurses don't cut nails here because I don't know whether it's infection. His hair was really long, so
do feet here.
yeah, and he told me about his whole family just completely breaking up. So, you know, just to be told that as I was leaving the hospital, I was like, I am definitely taking my tablets. Like, you know,
Did they plant him there for you?
I think he could be. Like, no, I'd seen him on the ward before, you know. So, but yeah, he could be a plant that they could just tell that to everyone because it was
like
a
warning. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a shady way to go about it. But wow, yeah, that would scare me straight. I think that would be pretty traumatizing even to hear. So.
Yeah, so I was like, definitely take my. I mean, I was used to it anyway because I was on more medication prior to my operation than I was.
That's, you know, what we have to tell so many people is, you know, yes, you're taking medication for the rest of your life, but you're going to anyways, you know. And the one thing people love to hear if they take lactulose typically stops after transplant. They're like, wait, what? That's all we have to say. That's like the golden ticket. It's so funny.
They're happy for it to stop.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can understand.
Hates it. I hated it. I mean, I only had it in a hospital setting, and I was miserable. So,
I mean, the taste of it, I quite like. I don't know whether we have a different flavor here, but I quite like the taste.
They've come a long way. It's come some way, and different pharmacies formulate it different.
Yeah.
So patients will be like, "Can I get that lactulose I had at that place?" And I'm like, "You're just call the pharmacy." It's so sticky and gross, and you know we have to put it down tubes and other places, and it just gets a mess.
Yeah, I used to be a support worker for people with learning disabilities, and I do remember if you came on shift and someone had said, you know, I've administrated lactulose to da 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 da. You're like, oh, this is going to be an interesting shift.
Like, okay, get some gloves, get ready. Yeah, it's tough. I mean, the reality of it, it has to happen. But
yeah, of course.
Yeah, you have to kind of, you know, be professional about it, but also it makes poop jokes funny. It's just really immature sometimes, but it's done.
Yeah, if you can't laugh about it, then there's no way you'd get through it.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you had your operation, you're on medication, you've been doing really well, and you're obviously, I mean, you're still in the medical field, as such.
Yeah, I finished school. I am now a registered nurse. I got my bachelor's of science in nursing. I've done a little bit of everything in nursing, but my goal after my transplant, shortly after, I realized I wanted to be a transplant coordinator, and help people through the process. And you know, I can connect with them, not having to tell them how to transplant, but I can just connect with them and kind of not always know what they're thinking. I can't read everyone's mind, but sometimes when a patient can't articulate or piece things together, I have a good idea of what they're trying to tell me and what's going on exactly.
Yeah, you definitely have a stronger understanding than someone that's not been through it. Definitely.
Yeah, it's a really unique experience to go through. So it's really interesting to see how we can, you know, connect and kind of learn those things, you know, from our patients.
It's interesting how you were obviously going through your nursing school and then you had this transplant, and then that kind of helped you decide what field you wanted to go into.
Yeah, I just was like, oh, I'll do like flight trauma or something with like a lot of adrenaline, or like, you know, I really wasn't sure. I also had an interest in, you know, kind of some like weight management and just overall like wellness, health, you know, more of a natural holistic thing too. So I was just kind of open to whatever. And then after that, I was like, well, I have to work in transplant. I absolutely have to.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So how would a typical day, or the job, how does it work?
So I'm gonna kind of outline my longest day right now, which is Tuesday.
Yeah.
Kind of give you a
So, and just to clarify, what's the job role? It's a transplant coordinator.
Yes, liver transplant coordinator, and I work with patients. I help them get through the evaluation process. So typically on a Tuesday, I would come in. Now we have to do our COVID screening, get our masks, show the screener all of this. It's all online. If I'm on call, let's just say to make my day even more fun, I'm on call on Tuesday, and I get a report from the person who was on call the day before. We do call in 24-hour shifts. So I see if there's any offers pending, anything we might be higher on the list for. In the U.S., United Network for Organ Sharing governs all of this, kind of to put it broadly. So we look on there. I look and see if there's anyone inpatient that needs their MELD score updated, the model for end-stage liver disease. Kind of how we gauge the need for transplant and how sick someone is. So let's say ideally, since I'm headed into clinic, we're not up for any offers or anything. Maybe we're lower down or there's nothing going on at that time. So I'd go over to clinic. Typically, I try to prep a little bit the day before, know who's coming in, know what they need, look at their labs, just to help the physician move it along and plan with him. So we'll go over some of our other patients when I get there. We'll talk about what we want to do for, Mr. Smith that day. Kind of look at what else he needs for his evaluation. If maybe we look at a cardiac test, maybe his echocardiogram was a little concerning. So maybe we want to refer him to cardiology. So we would be able to tell him that during the appointment, kind of give him a heads up of what's going on. Kind of not warn our patients, but keep them in the loop, keep them involved. And I think it helps patients to be a better advocate when we're always communicating with them.
Yeah, definitely.
It's just easier to have a conversation with the patient as opposed to dictating everything, I think. If I have any new evaluations, that's where the appointment gets a lot longer. Before we have a new evaluation, I look over the medical records that we have and try to create as much of a story as I can. It always kind of ends up like Swiss cheese. There's always things that are missing or don't add up or contradict each other. So I've already done that. And then I help the physician get a more comprehensive A to Z picture of the patient. Usually we have an idea of what we want to plan for testing. And we go over everything with them. For the patient going through that's a long appointment usually. At least the way our center does it, during that appointment, they'll see the physician, the social worker, depending on the day, maybe the surgeon and the dietitian.
Do you have a fitness test that people have to do?
We do what we call a frailty test. With the dietitian. So she measures, just how strong they are, how much they're able to walk.
We get put on, I mean, I don't really understand why, but I got put on a bike, and I spoke to a lot of people this happens. You get put on a bike and you get sort of all the, the wires put on you, and then they just make you go as fast and as hard as you can until you literally can't go anymore.
So sometimes people will get a stress test and they'll do it on the treadmill. So that could, I'm sure it's just a matter of, other sides of the Atlantic doing a little bit different. But we probably gather that information like different ways, but generally the same thing. We want to see what your heart can handle. That's a huge factor.
But what I say is like there's people that come in to have a transplant that are so ill that they couldn't even get on a bike. So what difference does it make? Like why do you have to test someone's fitness if fitness necessarily isn't an issue?
It's kind of weird. That is kind of interesting because we have patients who they're outpatient and they can't even do the treadmill test. So we have other ways of testing their heart. So yeah, that's kind of an interesting question. I mean, we always try to get the best picture we can without, hurting the patient.
Yeah. I suppose, yeah. I mean, I understand. I mean, if they're physical and able to do it, then you should do the tests. Yeah.
Me, you probably couldn't get me on a bike when I was that sick because I probably wouldn't have like figured it out. My brain was so, encephalopathic that I probably would be like, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm good, and just like walked off or something. So yeah, I mean, every center tests differently.
Yeah.
But basically, the things that we always look for, your heart, your lungs, are you strong enough for surgery? Are you safe enough for surgery? And a lot of times during the new evaluation, I do a ton of education, and we're always educating the patients. And one thing I always drive home is we want to make sure the benefit outweighs the risk.
Yeah.
You might be a candidate every other way, but you might have some heart condition that the surgeons just don't think they can operate. They don't think you're going to get through the surgery.
Yeah.
So, we can't really go through the transplant for that.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, and there's always indications. So we always kind of have like a flow sheet that kind of says, okay, if they have X, Y, and Z, do this cardiac testing. If they have this, that, and the other, different this testing. So everyone's is a little bit different, and that's really important to know. I mean, you could have two siblings going through transplant eval, and one of them has something that indicates further testing.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I mean, they could be twins. You just never know. So a lot of that is education and educating the patients on why we're doing the testing, what the testing, looks like. Some patients are kind of resistant to it, which is always concerning,
Yeah. I mean, I'm not resistant to it, but doctors tell me stuff and it kind of just goes over my head or in one ear out the other. I'm like, I think there's two groups of people. The people that need to know everything, they want to know every single detail. Whereas me, I'm like, well, this is your job. You know what you're doing. You just tell me to lie down. I'll lie down, and that's it.
I have faith in you. If you say I need to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And that's definitely nice in a lot of aspects. And everyone's background is different for different reasons, Some people, what they do for a living or what their health history is, or some people are just kind of, I don't want to say bad. They're just kind of doubting, well, why? I just did that. Yeah. Why? Why do I have to get labs again? Why? I'm like, oh, you're just a toddler, So it's interesting. There's a mix of people who are just like, yep, whatever you say.
Yeah.
And people who are so resistant to any testing. So, but yeah, that is interesting though, the bike. I don't know if that's like a UK thing or what. I'm sure probably just a different kind of test, similar to what they probably test for the same thing.
Yeah, it's like you say, a fitness and stress test your heart and everything like that.
Yeah, I think they probably just want to make sure that the operation would go through. Would be what I would think. Yeah,
and there must
there's no way.
There must be a level of testing to work out how much, in terms of drugs, you can have. Because if you're sedating someone, you don't want to over sedate, obviously.
Yeah. The anesthesiologist has to look at, what your heart's gonna do and what your lungs gonna do when you're on the OR.
Yeah.
Or you're in the OR on the table. We have to make sure that your heart is still going to pump. You're still going to. All your other organs are going to do their job. Yeah, that's an extremely important part. We can't just operate on anybody. It's not like a trauma surgery where you're just trying to save someone's life. And, there's a donor liver to think about.
Yeah.
Sometimes people have said, well, if I'm going to die anyway, what if I just die on the OR table? But, there's that other liver. There's that gift that needs to go to the right person.
Yeah.
It needs to be used appropriately. So it sounds kind of, I don't think it sounds selfish, but there's not enough to go around. So we need to make sure that they're going to survive 1 year, 5 years out. We have to look at long-term survival rate. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, I had 3 calls before the 4th call I finally got mine, but 3 times that the liver wasn't good enough. And they don't tell you, and I don't know whether the liver went to someone else, but I'm presuming when they say it's not good enough, Again, I don't know whether that means it's not good enough for me, but it's good enough for someone else, or whether that means that it's just not good enough in general and it gets scrapped.
Probably that it gets scrapped.
Yeah.
Sometimes we'll look at something and say, wow, this is really risky for this patient. We don't have another patient that can have it. This just isn't going to work. And maybe another center, can use it. Sometimes it's age, size, different things like that. I mean,
Yeah.
I actually worked in organ procurement, so I worked with donors as well. And, you could look perfect on paper. Somebody could, even their imaging could look perfect. And you get into the OR and there's a defect, and it's not worth the risk. So it's hard to get the call and then be told to go back home or that something's wrong. But I think it's safer. It's, I mean,
100%.
safer,
Yeah.
but
It's
I still have
horrible.
trust in my transplant center.
Yeah, it's horrible to be told to go back home, but I mean, you've got to have that 100% faith in the doctors. And like you say, there's no point in having an operation and then in a year's time you need another one, because it's just all that risk, it's just not worth it.
Yeah, I think personally, like, I don't know, like, it's maybe they definitely have your best interest in mind.
Yeah, definitely.
They're looking out for you specifically. I think that kind of speaks to the center and how careful they want to be,
Yeah.
But it's hard. You have all this rush of emotions, and then it's not a phone call I like to make, to tell someone, no.
Yeah.
It's hard, and they wait there for a long time, and now with COVID, they may have one visitor, maybe, so it's a lot to get mentally prepared for, but it's also a good practice run. Did you feel like by that time, like, you had it down, you knew?
Yeah. I mean, the first time I swore at the lady on the phone, like, I didn't mean to. She just said, "We've got to live here for you," and I went, "Oh shit!" And then she laughed and she went, "Is that the first call you've had?" I said, "Yeah, sorry." And she's like, "That's all
Yeah,
right."
we hear it. I'm not offended by that. When I call a patient, I had one patient, he kept not believing me. He's like, "Are you sure?" And I'm like, I mean, we're sure right now.
Yeah.
He's
So, I
like,
mean, I was in the
really
bath,
though, for
not
me?
expecting it. Yeah. I was in the bath, not expecting it at all. Just sort of pick up the phone. It's like, oh, God. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, I feel like we hear a variety of things when we call people in, Usually there's some shock, there's some like, wait, really? And I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, I'm not like pranking you. But I think it's good. It kind of gives some people practice,
Yeah.
I mean, ideally we could just get everyone transplanted right away, but it's a good practice run. It kind of gives you an idea what is going to go on.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So, I mean, and this can happen, 24/7. So I could be in the middle of clinic calling someone in, setting everything up. We set up transportation. We try to get local procurement, a surgery team to procure the organ wherever it is. Sometimes it's a plane, sometimes it's a helicopter, sometimes it's just driving, depending on where. Setting helicopters up is extremely stressful.
Yeah.
I don't like it. They're so weather dependent. It makes me so nervous.
Yeah.
We have to talk to the OR. We have to make sure there's beds. Unfortunately, right now with COVID, we have to talk to an administrator and make sure that we have beds, staffing, vents. I mean, everything. It has to go through so many people. So that's an added layer of stress for us, definitely, before we can call the patient in.
Yeah.
And then the answer could be no.
Yeah. And then you get that exciting call where you say, "Yes, come in."
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's great. I love it. I love people's reactions. I mean, it's my favorite part. How could it not be?
Yeah.
Calling someone in and telling them, especially when it's your patient or you know them, or you've maybe called them in before and then sent them home.
Yeah.
Like, but really this time I'm hoping. So it's always a good feeling, kind of like redeem yourself almost.
Yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah, so it's definitely a lot of work on our end behind the scenes. Sometimes it'll come to us really fast. So we'll call a patient and be like, "Don't take a shower, don't do anything, just come in." And they're like, "Can I?" I'm like, "No, now. I have to be sure
No.
Get in now." Which, I'm not yelling at them, but they're like, "Well, can I do this?" And I'm like, "No, you cannot do anything." It's, just timing. Sometimes it happens. So that's always kind of stressful. So yeah, if your coordinator tells you to come in now, they mean like 5 minutes ago.
Yeah. In terms of organs, like how does it work? So you see an organ come up that's available, and you match that to a patient. So how do these organs become available? Are they people that's in the local area? Is there a catchment to where the organs go? Because obviously America's massive, so.
Yeah.
And it kind of wouldn't surprise me if there was a privatized thing where companies buy them and then ship them off to where they like.
Definitely not.
No.
You would think, the way we're so spread out. But actually it's based on your MELD score. So your model for end-stage liver disease, it goes from 6 to 40. Yep. 6 is hopefully where we are right now. 0 liver disease. And this is all based on lab values. Okay. It's an algebraic equation based on lab values. 40, you're very sick, you're in the ICU. And then there's patients like me who are status 1A, above 40, top of the list. So it's based on that. That's a scoring system. And then it's actually kind of allocated out by nautical miles. So they take, the sickest people, and then, the closer, there's no one in, I think it starts at like 100 or 150 or something nautical miles, then they go out and out and out. So it kind of like is like a ripple. Most of our organs in San Diego come from San Diego, LA area, kind of just Southern California, sometimes Central and Northern California, Las Vegas, and Arizona. We can get offers from other places, but that's probably where 98% of our organs come from, or at least our livers.
Yeah.
Each organ is different outside of the body. It has a different amount of time.
I was just about to ask how long the liver was.
About 6 to 8 is like pushing it.
6 to 8 hours
closer.
In a cool box, obviously.
Yeah, in a box. We actually now have a liver pump that some centers are starting to use. We can pump a liver. So sometimes if it's a little bit further, or maybe depending on the donor health history or statistics, we can pump a liver and actually make it better.
Okay, this is great. How?
Yeah. It's more like the chemical composition to kind of make it short and sweet. So the kidney pump is kind of like dialysis for the kidneys, if you think about it.
Yeah.
So it makes the kidneys work.
Yeah.
So it actually makes them work in an ideal situation.
Yeah.
So the kidney pump's been around for a long time. The liver pump generally kind of does the same thing. It gives it this ideal situation to work in.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the best way to overall.
Yeah.
Sometimes that donor's body isn't the ideal situation for the liver to be in the best shape it can. But that pump, we can adjust different things on that pump that make it better.
Wow.
So by the time we're ready for a transplant, we've improved that liver.
Yeah, that's incredible.
It's awesome. It's so, transplant changes so much over time. And that's something that's been, in the works for a while. And I think it's going to make a big difference the more we can use it. We could use a liver that we maybe would not have used before, just because maybe the liver function test, maybe there's a little bit of too much bilirubin. The labs just aren't great, but the liver's not bad. We can really kind of prime it up. What they're not able to maybe do in the hospital, that liver pump can assist with.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
It's so cool.
Really cool.
It's more livers being transplanted, more people being donors, more people. It opens up for other people to get transplants. Shortens the waiting list. So
that's brilliant. And how many people do you have on your waiting list at any time generally?
I want to say, we just were talking about this and we were trying to figure it out. I want to say around 150 for us. And where I work, we're growing massively. Our transplant center is doing more and more transplants. We're getting more people on the list, which is awesome. It's not just numbers. It's a matter of, we can do more transplants, and we always need more donors and more people becoming donors, you know, so it's more people being transplanted, and ideally when they're less sick. You know, you never want to get somebody so sick, you know, so our program's definitely growing. Some patients are not as sick, but definitely can get sicker. You know, it's all based on labs. So, you know, we're not necessarily looking at them. So sometimes one little thing can change and they need to be on that list, you know, in case of that. So yeah, we're definitely growing as a center, like faster than I think we expected. So yeah, it makes it a busy, any day's busy, honestly. I mean, you know, I'll be in clinic in the morning, come over to my office side, and, you know, I have patient calls and labs to review and imaging and reports and that sort of thing to look over. So, you know, that list continues to grow and grow.
Never ending. Never ending.
Yeah, no, it doesn't, you know, I mean, as soon as you get someone, what we do is once the patient is listed, typically the nurse practitioner manages them. But, you know, then you have another new referral come in. So it's I don't want to say a revolving door, you know, and we still help out with those patients once they're listed, you know, so I could get, you know, all their labs, maybe they all went for labs that morning and they all need their score updated. You know, sometimes maybe their score was a little lower and maybe, you know, they have a kidney injury and one of their other labs went up, you know, it could shoot their score up, and that's something we need to be aware of. So there's a lot, you know, even just after clinic, you know, I think they think we just like are in clinic and that's it. We just, you know, type some messages. But
can't eat tea and biscuits.
Yeah, I mean lunch. What's that? So, so yeah, I mean we go back from clinic and handled that. On Tuesdays we have our selection committee. I always tell people selection committee is the reason you do all of the testing, the reason you meet with everybody. It's so we can basically write a novel about the patient. Head to toe, make sure everything looks good. They have a care plan, they have a support system, they're compliant, they're strong enough for transplant, they need a transplant. You know, if they don't have any, if they have liver cancer, we have to make sure it's nowhere else in the body. A lot to look at. When I say a novel, it's not really much of an understatement. So we go to the selection committee, and it's nurses, nurse practitioners, doctors, social workers, hepatologists, and surgeons. It's everybody. Sometimes anesthesiology or infectious disease will be on the call, financial coordinators, and we all look at it and kind of give our input.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's on each individual person?
Every patient gets viewed by the whole team. Yeah.
That's manic.
You know, not them physically, but you
know. Yeah. Obviously, they review the paperwork and everything.
All of the testing, and you know, we always try to tell people you can't really butter us up. You just have to do what we ask. That's the only thing that's going to help you. You know, I mean, being compliant obviously is crucial. We can't transplant people that won't listen to us. There's, you know, not a good outcome. Like, you know, the guy you met in the office, it never turns out well.
No.
You know, so we look at all of that. We make sure that we feel like surgery is going to go well and they're going to have a good outcome. Ideally, we approve everybody. So, you know, if not, maybe we want more testing, or maybe we just have to tell them, you know, you're not doing anything that's asked of you, or it's not safe.
So, it's generally down to them if it's not been approved.
A lot of times, you know, sometimes medically, if they're not medically approved, it's typically like a heart condition that's pretty severe that, you know, the surgeons are just not optimistic that they're going to do well. Or maybe they have, if they had cancer, maybe their disease spread, or if they have cancer and an active cancer in another part of their body. You know, other than that, a lot of times they don't have a care plan. They're not compliant. Sometimes people are still, if it's, you know, someone with alcoholic cirrhosis, or even not, they're still drinking. They're still, you know, unfortunately, we've had patients that use IV drugs still. So So
just
we
not
can't
taking
have
care of
that.
themselves, and yeah,
Yeah.
that's
It's hard.
understandable.
We don't expect perfection, you know.
Yeah, but you have to show a willingness to improve and to look after yourself, surely. Yeah.
Exactly. We want to see some effort, you know. I mean, we have patients, especially with NASH being so prevalent and fatty liver disease. You know, a lot of our patients, we want to lose weight, but we're not going to tell them that because they only lost 8 pounds, not 10, because they decided to have a cheeseburger, that they're not on the list. I
Yeah.
mean, we want to work with people. We know they're human.
Yeah.
You know, that's not a contraindication. So we want to be nice to everybody.
Yeah.
As nice as we can. So
Yeah.
yeah, selection committee is definitely interesting, you know. There's different coordinators, so I don't see all of the patients. So sometimes, you know, we'll hear about some real interesting stories. I mean, it can be like a saga, you know, for some of the patients, and then it's a variety of people, that's for sure.
Yeah.
That's definitely for sure. You get the most compliant patients, you get patients that are on another level. So.
Yeah, I bet. It's a great job you do though, and it's great that you got that inspiration from having your own transplant. And it's great that you can help other people. And like you say, that you kind of understand the process, so it's important, really.
Yeah, I think, you know, understanding the process and sometimes understanding what's scary about it.
Yeah.
You know? And seeing, you know, they don't always want to tell you things. They're so nervous, and sometimes I think they don't want to say things because they think it'll hurt them. I'm like, it's okay to be afraid. If you
Yeah.
weren't afraid, I'd be more concerned.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes patients have a little bit of, you know, survivor's guilt, or they're like, well, what if somebody deserves it more than I do? You know, and
I think
that's a lot.
I've had a mix of all of them emotions, really.
Yeah.
Like, to say that I haven't would be a lie. The why me? How comes I was lucky? How comes someone had to die? And yeah, it does cross your mind.
Yeah, it definitely, you know, I always try to tell people you're not that important. That person was going to die completely separate of you.
Yeah.
You know, and they're like, oh, I am not that important. You know, it sounds harsh, but no one is so important that they're causing someone else's death that they've never had any contact with,
Yeah.
never crossed a path with. I think that's important to realize, that
Yeah.
you have nothing to do with it. That was going to happen completely separate of you, whether you were on the list, not on the list. It was going to happen. And actually, my cousin was a donor. After I was transplanted a few years later, he was actually an organ donor. So it
Really.
was a super easy choice to make for my
Yeah.
family, for him to be a donor. And we love that he's a donor. We're so proud that he's a donor. He knew how much it meant to be that to
Yeah.
somebody else. And while it was probably one of the hardest days of my life, you know, you just can't wrap your head around it. Even at that point, I had just worked, you know, for organ procurement. I had just done this for a
Yeah.
living. You know, my little cousin said, you know, think about all those families that are going through what we went through when Amy got her liver. We're doing that for all of those people.
Yeah.
You know, so these families want to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's very nice words. Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard. It's definitely hard. It's somebody you can never actually think.
Mm.
You know, so that's definitely tough. And that's why, you know, a lot of times we have our patients see like a neuropsychologist, or encourage counseling if they
Yeah.
have, you know, anxiety and depression. There's nothing wrong with helping like wrap your head around that.
Yeah, I signed up to counselling. I mean, I tried to sign up whilst I was going through the process, and over here it took so long to happen that it just didn't.
Yeah.
And then about a year after, I was like, I need to speak to someone on a deeper level. So I signed up, and a few months, I did it for a few months, and it really, really helped.
That it does, and it's so important. It's
Yeah,
not like anything else. And you know, I hope more people can do what you did. Just
yeah,
help, you know, someone outside of you, a professional, a different perspective, you know. And I think there's such a neat transplant community online,
yeah,
and the way to connect, you know, to different people who have gone through it. And sometimes just hearing one sentence that they say, I think is really it clicks.
Yeah, you can fully relate, but at the time you're thinking that no one else has that feeling. So when you see that, yeah, definitely.
And I think, it's important for me to be involved in that, as a recipient, as a donor family member, and sometimes things that maybe don't resonate with me as much maybe work for a certain patient. I've looked at things or seen people that have said things, and I'm like, I'm going to tell someone this. I know who needs to hear this.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's important, definitely. It's not something you just kind of like tuck away and never really think about. You think about it a lot.
Yeah. Well, thank you very, very much. I mean, that was
You're
so
welcome.
interesting.
Hopefully that kind of gives you an idea of kind of a typical day. I mean, there's still, radiology reviews, education, classes, all these things that we have to do, but just, how it works from our perspective and what your transplant coordinator is kind of looking at.
Yeah, definitely. Because like I say, I mean, we'd spoke about this a bit before in messages. So, a lot of us have seen it obviously from the transplant side, and you've seen it from both sides, which is amazing.
Yeah. And I think, while you're going through it, most people, the smartest person is just a little bit shell-shocked.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had patients who are physicians and not everything absorbs, and that's totally fine. It's a lot to take in,
Yeah, definitely.
But yeah, I mean, I just always encourage patients just ask questions.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, because
never hesitate.
With the question playing on your mind can often be it's more of a trouble than just asking the question and getting that answer, because that answer just relieves all the stress or whatever you're worrying about.
Exactly. It's there. You have the right answer. You're not doing anything you're not supposed to do.
Yeah.
It's fine. People, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm like, it's literally my job to coordinate and answer questions.
Yeah.
In my job title. Totally appropriate.
Oh, that's brilliant. Well, I'm sure a lot of people will feel a bit of solace in that as well, because so many people do have questions, but they might just be too worried to. About 2 months, maybe not even 2 months, maybe about a month after my transplant, I was out in the garden and I got stung by a bee or a wasp. And I knew there was going to be no issues, there was no side effects, but I still rang up my transplant because it was literally so close. And I just went, look, I've been stung by a bee. Is anything going to happen? She laughed and she was like, no. And I was like, I'm really sorry to call. And she was like, no, that's totally fine.
But that's not something that we educate our patients on. I mean, we don't educate somebody on every possible thing that could happen. So that's actually not a crazy question. I think that's totally reasonable. These things happen. You're like, oh, I guess better safe than sorry.
Yeah, definitely.
I would rather get a call from someone in the afternoon asking me about that than something goes south or they do something wrong and I'm scrambling at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
It's totally fine. We cannot educate a patient on every single scenario.
Yeah.
Ever. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
Too many things that can happen. So.
Yeah, definitely. Well, just looking at the time, we better wrap this up. We've nearly been talking for 50 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Very interesting.
It's a long day.
It's been brilliant. I don't want to take up too much of your time because I know you're a busy person, so I don't want to hold you here all the time.
I have a 3-day weekend.
Oh, lovely. Well, I'll let you go off and enjoy that. So thank you very much for coming on, Amy, and I hope you have a lovely year.
All right.
Brilliant. Thank you. Bye-bye.